kind of marketing action, especially advertising, packaging, everything a company does has a social impact. And sometimes we do not think about that. Listen to their voice, look at their practice, look at their everyday life, okay? Map your life, their day, and what they do, not what they tell you.
The goal is instead to look at the product or a project or a service or an experience in a center and have as many perspectives as different.
To tell us how exactly a brand is built, how exactly you can do that in a different country, and how you can work on processes to make sure the impact is felt. I am joined with Stefania and Andrea today. Thank you very much for joining us today for this conversation. I'm really looking forward to this session. We have all heard about the 4 Ps, 7 Ps, and the increasing number of Ps in marketing now in the world of these schools. The first P that I want to touch upon is the product. From the product side of things, if a company knows that its product is bang on target, and it's definitely going to work in different setups in different cultures, and they have the funds to do that, do you think just these two is enough for you to make an expansion strategy in a different country?
Well, the product is the same, because the product is one once you create it. But the level of adaptation is absolutely essential. The more you go, the further you go in the expansion, the more suitable needs the adaptation to the local context. This is actually something that is quite relevant in the international marketing, localizing versus globalizing. You know? So you need to have tools. We have brands of shampoo that differs in sizes of bottles according to the percentage of time or the percentage of the amount of shampoo used by the different country. So we know by empirical evidence that in Brazil they wash hair with more shampoo than the other, therefore the bottles is bigger. So really easy issues that arrive to make us conclude that you need to adapt to the local. You can do this only if you know your customer, if you know the customer through the culture. The same case of what Paoli is doing. Paoli is producing croissant, he's very famous in Italy, he's famous for the softness of those croissants. When they come to India, in order to make Indian people interested in looking for croissant, they had to meet the Indian tastes, which are different from the European. For us, sweet is good. Here you say chatpata or masala as something that is more relevant to your country. Paoli can arrive in an abrupt way and say, no, this is sweet, the croissant is only sweet, and hoping that the customer will answer positively, or adapting and producing a croissant that has some savory and salty, more masala tastes in their product. So the product is the same. In this case, it can change, but the idea is original, needs to be adapted to the country. Otherwise, there will be no necessary of being so different.
What exactly does localizing mean, in your opinion, in a global brand? Say, for example, I started my conversation with saying Netflix, right? It's a brand that is known, it's a company that is known to over 190 countries across the globe. How does it localize or customize its products or services in such a way that every customer who is using it feels that they are connected with the product?
Well, there are, as we were saying at the beginning, there are different levels, okay? Sometimes you need to change the product a little bit. Sometimes you have to work on the packaging, again, on the aesthetics, on the way you present. In other cases, you modify the channels, but I mean, it depends. Even the same company with different products has to make this different level of customization and adaptation. The most important thing is to remember that before moving, before expanding, before approaching a different culture, you really need to know, as Andrea was saying at the beginning, the people, your customers, which are their rituals, their practices, the way they approach the specific kind of products. Some companies just go everywhere without knowing exactly the culture. So in these cases they fail because they don't understand what they need to provide in terms of meanings and values to their customer. Netflix has been successful, for instance, and because it appears as this global brand is able, to, let's say, meet the needs of different customers. In Italy, there is this interesting case. There are some TV series that actually they are being produced by the national channel Rai Uno, but it is a channel that targets not young people, and young people will never think about looking at their programs, okay? And while on Netflix, they watch these Rai Uno programs without knowing that they belong to Rai Uno, because there is the stigma among young people about the Rai Uno. So it is nice, it is fascinating to see that Netflix is even able to better sell these kind of programs, because they know that young people will watch them, but then they will never look for it on the national TV.
Stefania, you have worked on something which you've termed as symbolic consumption. Can we build on your answer, as you just mentioned about Netflix, and sometimes you don't even know what you're consuming, probably it's coming in from a different source. So can you define what symbolic consumption is in this context, and how can a marketer use this to the fullest capacity?
Yeah, symbolic consumption is our dimension of consumption, which is related to consumption of meanings. Okay, so as I said before, we do not buy products and services or experience a brand only because of their functionality. Okay, we buy stuff because of also the emotional meanings, the hedonic meanings, all the benefits that go beyond, okay, the feature, the technical feature of the products. So when we buy something also because we need to build our identity, okay? So I can like one global brand or a local brand, but maybe my kids like something different, or when we look at the same brands, we can see different kind of values, okay, depending on the gender, of the age, or our personal background. So for instance, in these cases, in the symbolic consumption dimension of young people, when we were thinking about Netflix, they do not relate symbolically and emotionally with more traditional kind of TV channels, okay, because they think that they are only for older people, for adults, their grandparents, okay, but only for the fact that something is released on Netflix, maybe they have a different approach, because Netflix is a brand that is younger, is a brand that represents their life, their lifestyle, their tastes, their needs. Okay, so in these cases, I mean, it is the same products on different channels, but with different meanings because of that. So symbolic consumption is in general everything you study when you want to understand the relationship between consumers and products and brands, and the role that these products and brands play in helping people to build their self-image.
Andrea, building on what Stefania just said about symbolic consumption, back home in India as well, we have seen companies taking that route. We have talked about Dove as the product of real beauty. We have talked about Ariel, where a campaign for Share the Load has happened, where these products are not just products, but there are values attached with your life and for the society as well. So in today's day and age, how important do you feel that is for brands to associate themselves with the values? How important it is for a brand to actually take a social stand?
In the case of Ariel, where you show not only you don't sell the product, but you give also the message of sharing the load in a culture that probably the sharing the loads, just to make an example, sharing the loads is probably necessary in India, with the Indian culture, is not necessary in Sweden, where the, let's say, parity or sharing of loads of activity in every family is already something that happened since many years ago. But nowadays, the social message given by companies is very spread. But this is possible to do only if you know the consumer culture of the day. So you cannot decide, okay, we are standing for this, and you go everywhere with the same campaign in different parts of the world. In the case of IKEA, that has to, they decided to do something one for all, and eventually in the Saudi Arabia or a place in the Middle East was blocked the campaign because the way ladies were pictured in the campaign was not suitable to the standard. So you need to know the culture at the end.
Any kind of marketing action, especially advertising, packaging, everything a company does has a social impact. And sometimes we do not think about that, okay? Think about a lot of advertising about food, food consumption. They used to represent the traditional family where women have to work, or think about the detergent, women have to do the job. The impact that all these years of this kind of advertising has a social impact, because kids grow up learning that the female members of the family have to take care about the home while the male has to explore. Now in some countries this kind of advertising is forbidden, okay?
Right.
So the authority that controls, so for instance in the UK, in the North Europe, and in some cases also in the US, before an advertising is released, someone, an authority, an association checks that the message, how we should behave in society, okay? So it's not just when a company decided to have this kind of storytelling or whatever, but it's also when they do not think about it, so the goal is to talk about their products, they have an impact from the cultural point of view.
I wanted to touch upon something that I noticed in the session that was happening about Baoli as well. Baoli is making a croissant, Britannia is also making a croissant, but which is more affordable to the audience and which is more relevant to the particular market that they are in? So is this a case that somebody who is going in a store and seeing Baoli will have a perception that it's a foreign brand, and hence maybe the price is super high and I can't afford it? Whether on the other hand, where Britannia has been a player which has been there for centuries in India, and it has establishment and it has become a home brand for people, at that stage, would the price comparison come into mind without even me looking at the wrapper for the MRP?
There are companies that can afford having the same price everywhere in the world, and like luxury product, Cartier or also Chanel is doing the same price everywhere. Or Apple, for example, when they launch the new product all over. But sometimes, in the case of Baoli, they doesn't have the same coverage of the country like Britannia has. Britannia is here for many, many years, Baoli just arrived. That's the first things. And therefore, if you have differences in distribution, the costs are changing, and therefore the price is changing. But then there is also something that is interesting, the fact that what you just said, so the perception of something coming from abroad is influencing. Yes, for sure. But the idea of Baoli is to reach the people that is actually eating Britannia. Britannia is now more spread all over the country rather than Baoli. They are working with the idea, as far as we understood, with the idea that in the future these distribution issues will be covered. And therefore they are already focusing on the real relation with the consumer. So what is the taste of Indian people versus a snack? Is it possible to have something that has a competitive advantage in Italy? The fact that a ready-made snack is as soft as the one that you buy at the bakery. In this case, the element of being crispy instead of soft is an advantage. If we start from the beginning and we see what happens in Italy, if you buy a crispy snack ready-made in a bag, it looks like old, out of display. We are not looking for that. So you see how the culture, the taste is changing and is affecting, therefore, the company, and eventually is affecting also the price.
The company in this case is when especially they have some competitive disadvantage, for instance, related to distribution, they need to invest a lot in communication, okay? Because maybe, especially for the consumer who cannot find easily the products on the shelves, they need, to know that that product has something which is Italian, but it is something that they would appreciate. So communication is important, because consumers, as I always tell to my students, are not there just waiting for new products, okay? We don't have time time we have very busy life and active routines. So I mean, we tend also to buy what we are used to, but then you need to inform and find a way to engage the people, and so that they can change their habits, so to change the loop of their habits and start to consume something different. But you need to find a way to be, effective and communicate these features to them.
So as somebody who has the responsibility of launching a new product in a country like India, what should be the marketing mix for the promotion in your opinion?
Well, it depends. It depends on the category and it depends on the target, okay? First of all, we said it and we are going to repeat it, you need to know your target, okay? The behavior of people. Some people can be reached, unfortunately, only through TV advertising or billboards, because are people who are not so digital, or when they are online, they don't care about specific kind of advertising, okay? So these people need to be reached with these heavy investments in communication, traditional media. While there are other targets like kids, young people, they do not look at TV anymore. I mean, of course they can look at the TV program, but through their computer, through laptop, tablets and so on. Those people are more sensitive, more to digital kind of advertising, and now there is TikTok in many countries of the world that is more effective. And in this case, it's the company, for instance, communicates with a different tone, with a different content. And so for some products and for some targets, you need to use a totally different kind of instruments and media. In other cases, influencers are important, especially influencers who are expert in a specific field. For instance, imagine makeup, okay? So an influencer who is well known for the suggestion, advice about makeup, maybe they can be the right one to involve for products related to them, not to discuss, for instance, about diapers for children and for newborn.
You're taught in Bocconi for quite some time in Milan. You have been here in India as well. In terms of your experiences with the students, if you can talk a little bit about the program that you are associated with as well and you are teaching, and how is that going to make them better marketers or managers in the future?
The most important element that I've learned so far in teaching in Bocconi first, and we also try to teach here, is the really field project, or actually approach and usability, the fact that you teach theory, but you need to help, not only having practical approach, but you need to help to exploit theory in our courses to read the reality with a different perspective. In the course of consumer behavior, we teach models, we teach perspective, we talk about symbolic meaning, we talk about rituality, we talk about extended self, we talk about self-discrepancies and everything. But we teach the students to use this lens to look at reality. And in consumer behavior, it's very, very useful because it's everywhere.
A part of this is also a case study from Campari, as we saw in the classes today. Tell us a little bit about the importance of people actually solving these case studies and how that actually builds them or grooms them in a way so that they are ready for the market.
Well, Campari is the typical example of project that we do with the students, okay? They receive at the beginning of the course an assignment, a real assignment, so a real problem that companies are challenging. So as the marketing manager today was very, very fair and honest towards the students, and in front of them he said, you are working on that, we are struggling on that. The same did Bauli, okay, in the other class. So the students, what I have to do, and in my opinion is one of the best way to learn, okay? They come to class and they try to learn new theories and methodologies, of course, because you need theory and methodologies, and then day by day, step by step, they apply these different kind of tools, the theoretical and practicals, to the challenge that they have, okay? And then at the end, they are almost doing the same process that the company is doing, of course with different kind of resources, but they can have fresh ideas, okay? Because they do not have the typical limitation that an organization has. They don't have what we call marketing myopia, so it means that you have an idea and you tend to repeat the same framework. In these cases, they are fresh. And the work that we do, especially with the Indian students, because it is typical to have different backgrounds, the educational backgrounds. They come from engineer, computer science, not only management, okay? And for instance, the work that I do with them is try to force them to forget for a while especially the technical background, because a specific course, university programs gives you specific kind of tools and way of looking at things. Instead, okay, while you are in marketing and consumer research, you have to forget for a while that approach and do your best using the tools to be, let's say, position of the consumers, listen to their voice, look at their practice, look at their everyday life, okay? Map your life, their day, and what they do, not what they tell you, which is something different, okay? What they do, and then you work on them, and you need to develop a new value proposition, a new product, or a new communication for them. But this, you know, they need to detach for a while from what they already know.
So I want the viewers who are listening to us or watching us to also know about some of the skills that they need to develop in themselves right now, so that they become better managers for tomorrow, better leaders for tomorrow. And what advice would you want these very people to leave with?
Well, for sure, if you are a manager, you need to have clear in mind that there are opinions and there are empirical evidence. So there is something that is actually your proposal, but the proposal needs to start, the solution of a problem, the strategy needs to have a basis, an analytical basis. So before the strategy, typically there is the analysis. That's the first point. And second is that above all, when we talk about consumer behavior, it's important, the statistic, it's important the statistical relevance of an outcome, but it's also important understanding the way people consume, the reason why people consume, and above all, the fact that at the basis of everything there is the fact that each individual is the mixture between rational and emotion, and only understanding and acknowledging the co-presence of these two, you arrive to the definition, more than definition, the painting of the proper consumer behavior. Because if you rely only on data, it's important, but maybe you are focusing, you are exploring only a limited aspect. The goal is instead to look at the product or a project or a service or an experience in a center and have as many perspectives as different.
Right.
Yeah, I would add also that of course, rigor, because we were talking about empirical evidence, so you need to be rigorous in the way you collect your data, you analyze your data. Curiosity, because marketing is not done only in office, in front of a desk, looking at analytics and writing marketing plans or budget, whatever. It's made also by the capacity of being able also to look around. And of course, if you are a marketer, you have specific knowledge that allows you to interpret faster than other people what's going on, okay? So be able to do the job in a pleasant way also when you go around, look at people on the digital world, in the real world, in any case. Actually the digital world is a real world. I have to say in different kind of dimension, okay, to observe people and be always curious, and also to be able sometimes to forget what you know, so, and to be able to be critical with your own pillars, okay? So to say, okay, we have been working for a lot of time on these ideas about how our customers are the same. Can we rely on the same knowledge ideas, or it's better that we check and we start from, not from scratch, but we, to be able to understand when things are evolving.
Absolutely. On that note, thank you very much, Stefania. Thank you very much, Andrea, for the valuable insights that you have shared. I'm sure people who are listening to this, they might have gotten something back with them. They must have known a lot about marketing. They must have definitely known a lot about how they should approach when they're coming in with a product of their own or the service. If you want to know more about the courses that they teach, if you want to know more about the life here and what you will learn, there is a link in the description. Go check that out. Thank you very much once again, Stefania and Andrea, for sharing these knowledgeable insights with us and sharing what exactly becoming a marketer means in this country.
Okay.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.